Now let's talk about a book and a life vastly lived. Struggle activist and poet Mongane Wally Serote, better known as honoured struggle icon and ANC stalwart Ruth Mompati. The book titled Ruth Mompati, Life of Courage and Service, there it is, takes one through the journey of Mompati's miraculous early life and political awakening, a personal and political life while in exile. Mompati was one of the very first women members of ANC's military wing, uMkhonto Sizwe. She was also a member of the ANC senior leadership for most of her life. But to tell us more about his latest book, Wally Serote joins us here in studio. Poet, laureate, author, the list goes on. Thank you so much for your time this morning. And I need to say thank you for this. Unfortunately, I haven't had the time to read all of it because it's so dense and so well researched, I found. It's an academic work to a certain extent, but somehow, as with so much of your work, you've been able to weave a very, very deep academic research with footnotes, but bringing across the soul of Mam Ruth Mompati as well. Tell us how you approached this book in terms of how you wanted to bring across her a rather amazing life.
Well, first of all, I was approached by the current Premier of Northwest, Mompaiti, and who said to me, Ruth is of age now, and it would be good to record something about her. I had never thought I would write a biography of anybody.
Yeah.
So my response was, I need to talk to Ruth, and then I'll be able to make my decision. I met Ruth and I said to Ruth, you are my elder, you are my leader. You are going to allow me to say everything that I need to say about you, or I don't write a book. And she said, write it. And that's how I started. So I'm talking about somebody that I had lots of respect for. I'm talking about somebody who was a very staunch, very disciplined, very disciplining leader of the ANC. And therefore, it had to be that I approach it with absolute respect, but also it was a time when, as everybody knows, the ANC was in serious trouble.
And I want to ask you about that specifically because it would have been around, I think when Bushemape approached you, it would have been around the Polokwane conference, and we all remember that time. I was covering it as a journalist. I want to know what it was like writing this book about a woman whose life was so strongly connected to the ANC movement while watching your beloved party and organization going through what it was going through from Polokwane right up until the publishing of the book. Did that have an impact on how you brought across her story?
It did have an impact because I was asking myself, I belong to this movement, we all grew up in this movement, we believed very strongly in everything that the movement had planned and was executing. And we were part and parcel of experiences when South Africa became a transformed country, you know. But we're also aware, as you mentioned, Polokwane, that something had gone very, very wrong in the ANC. And so these were the two things which I had to use as my point of reference. As I say, here is a leader who I was very aware also that she was absolutely broken-hearted because of what had happened to the movement. She spoke about it many times. All of us were asking what went wrong. And she was one of the people as a leader who was asking that question. So I wrote it with the thing, as I said to her, I'm going to be absolutely truthful. I'm going to be absolutely led by how I was brought up as an ANC member. To say, here is what we did, here is what went wrong, here is what we must do. And we agreed that that's how I would approach it.
The genesis of Mompati's life is one that is mirrored by many women of her generation, growing up in rural South Africa, losing a parent, having to spend a year or so in the service of a white family, and then finally being able to further her education, and then her personal grit and determination takes over from that. What did you learn about her life that you perhaps as her junior in the movement did not know up until you started having these far more intimate conversations and doing more research into her life?
Let me share with you the first time I met her, which will indicate how I had then after that to relate to her, but why she did what she did. I met her, and the first thing that she said to me, "Why are you so dressed, untidily dressed?" You know. And I had not had...
What were you wearing?
Of course you should ask that. I had very large hair, and
yes.
I was not very tidy. And you'll see that there is a picture in the book there where I'm in a tie and a suit and with her. But I'm raising a very important point. We young people then, we thought by being revolutionaries, you don't care for yourself. You look at but if you don't care for yourself, how can you care for anything else? This is what she was saying to me. I understood her to say. And I discussed it with her, and that's true. Look after yourself, educate yourself, find yourself, your essence, so that when you enter into these big things about revolutions and anything, you understand yourself and why you are there, and you'll then understand what your role is in the movement. That's how I responded. And from then on, I had to really look after myself. And I'm glad that she taught me to do that. You see.
What are you hoping people will gain out of reading her story? And I don't want to overuse the word hope, but in finishing the story and writing her story, did it give you some hope that not just the movement that you both loved so much can somehow find its way to the light, or that the country can have some light to look after, look forward to, as it were?
It's a mixture of thoughts. When I look at the book and I look at what is happening, first and most important is I am absolutely aware that the history of struggle was a history which demanded everything human from us. And I believe that we executed it in that way. All one can do is look at the Freedom Charter, what it says about our country. It is a mobilization of South Africans so that all South Africans, black and white, all South Africans own South Africa, belong to South Africa, protect South Africa. How else can you have other higher ideals than that? But at the same time, it is a history. To arrive at the Freedom Chart, we went through a whole history. We could have been racist, for all I know. We could have been very destructive of our country. But if you look at the history of the ANC, it was an organization that was going to build a livable country where everyone belonged, where everyone had a sense of responsibility. And this is how I would like to describe it. But then also, something has gone wrong. Now, as we look at it, we're asking ourselves and answering the question, what went wrong? You know?
One final question, because unfortunately we do need to go to the electricity minister. It has been quite a week of introspection for large parts of the country as we bid farewell to Mangosuthu Buthelezi. And I found that it is very difficult to describe the time in our history. I'm talking about the 80s, going into the early 90s, heading up to our first democratic election. There's a lot of focus on that this week, and the wounds that the passing of Buthelezi reopened. And it was difficult to find the words. You talk about the turbulent times, you talk about the trauma. And I want to know from you as a poet, what it's like trying to put the words to the trauma, the violence, and the tragedies that so many parts of our population had to live through during that time, where somebody like Mangosuthu Buthelezi was one of the leading figures in writing that part of our turbulent history.
I am very happy that many South Africans, after the chief passed, expressed utter respect and were humane about his passing. I'm very happy that we can do that as South Africans, and this is a very important element of our being as South Africans, as Africans. Of course, that does not mean that we'll gloss over things. We'll talk about the other things, but the man has passed. We must lay him to rest. We should wish that he sleeps peacefully where he is, everything given. Out of that, we must then learn what is it that we should do, having been able to formulate our understanding of his passing and how we respect him. I'm saying we are always going to have to be a humane people. I always say to people that I am very lucky when I feel very lucky that when I joined the ANC, what I learned from the ANC was I'm going to be a humane person. And everything that we do as human, as the ANC was that. And therefore, it is extremely painful for all of us in the ANC now that we are where we are, because we have now to apologize to our people that we stood for humaneness. We fought for humaneness. We achieved possibilities for humaneness. What went wrong? I have to keep coming to this, because this is on the agenda not only for the ANC, but for the nation. And the ANC must take responsibility and apologize to our people that under our watch, so much went wrong. And we have to take that position, starting point. Something went very, very wrong after we had a strong history of freedom, of struggle and freedom. Something went very, very wrong under our watch. We owe the nation, and we have to explain to the nation what happened.
Mongane Wally Serote, it's always an education to hear you speak. Thank you so much for making the time this morning.
Thank you.
The book is called Ruth Mompati, A Life of Courage and Service, the foreword by former President Thabo Mbeki, but written by our National Laureate, Mongane Serote. We thank you so much for your time and all the best with this book. Can't wait to see what's next.